This week on the internet is a series where we talk about all the topics of during the week. And first up, we have Valve not being able to hide Deadlock anymore. So, you might have seen, but the player numbers for Deadlock are kind of insane right now. They're hitting peaks of 20 to 30,000 players, and the game is at its all-time peak. Allegedly, because it's technically not announced yet or out. It's just on Steam TV, and you can just see the player counts rise over time. And you might have also seen a Verge article talking about Deadlock, and people had a very mixed reception to this article coming out. Now, I also have a mixed opinion on it. On one hand, I am in the Deadlock Early Access, and I have not revealed anything about the game that is not already public knowledge, because I am respecting this little thing right here. And in the Verge article about Deadlock, they addressed this early development pop-up, and they said instead of pressing OK to agree to the terms, they simply pressed escape to escape responsibility. And this didn't work, by the way, they did get banned, but I think this is the main reason people hated this article because, yeah, it sounds really smug. Like, oh yeah, I'm so much smarter than everybody else. I figured out the code. All you have to do is not agree to the terms. Like, this is obviously, like, really stupid. There is no official NDA for Deadlock, so them leaking this was entirely in their right to do. It was an informal agreement. Now, do I think it's the morally correct thing to do? Yes and no. So on one hand, I am in the early development build, and I have this selfish desire to preserve its state because it's a very interesting thing to be a part of right now, right? And I think that's where a lot of the backlash is coming from, because reportedly there's like 200,000 people in this beta. It is hardly a closed beta anymore, or alpha, because it's technically not beta, but either way, there's a lot of people that want to preserve their status of being in the alpha. It is a cool thing to be a part of and not have other people join. It's a cool little club right now, so I understand that. But if I wasn't in the playtest, I would have really appreciated this article because I like Valve games, so it would have been cool to know this was a thing that was coming and it existed. I would have appreciated this if I wasn't in the playtest, so I really don't have the biggest issue with it. I agree they were being extremely smug about it, especially on Twitter. I didn't like that at all, but the article itself, I really don't have a massive problem with it, because in my mind, if this was like EA or a different studio, no one would care. Like, personally, I definitely respect Valve more than other companies, for sure. I would have been a lot more likely to leak it myself if it wasn't a Valve game. I still don't think I would have, but yeah, I definitely respect this game more because it's Valve making it and not EA. And one simple tip, if you do want to playtest this game that allegedly may exist or not, if you know someone who has it, you're in. Just ask them. Or check out this subreddit where all they do is really share invites. At this point, with how many people are in the playtest, it really shouldn't be that hard to get in. Also, I will say at this point, it is kind of ridiculous to still expect this early access playtest thing to be kept secret. It is within the top 100 games on Steam almost at all times now. This game cannot be hidden anymore. Let's be honest. Someone eventually would have made an article like this or a video like this. If Valve really wanted to keep this game secret, they should have never let people invite this many people. I understand that players should respect the warning, but if you're inviting 200,000 people, you're guaranteed to have one guy in that group to leak it. Guaranteed. Especially since the first leaks of this game were months ago, when the game had a couple thousand people playing it. That's when I first found out about the game. I made a video about it. And just so we're all clear, I made the video before I had access. It's not my footage. I want to be clear on that. But yeah, you can't expect a game like this to stay secret that long, especially when you invite 200,000 players. Valve had to know this would happen, and if they didn't, oh my god, they must be really stupid. And next up, we have Amazon and TikTok forming a partnership. Now, this is interesting because in a way, TikTok and Amazon are competitors. TikTok has TikTok Shop, and in a weird way that is competing with Amazon because it's online shopping. I'm not sure how much of an actual threat it is to Amazon, because from what I've seen about TikTok Shop, they are just selling you absolute trash and losing money on it, hoping to retain your business. That's it. The prices on there are inhuman. They make no sense. But either way, Amazon is working with Twitch directly to integrate Amazon shopping on TikTok. And assuming TikTok doesn't take a ridiculous cut of the Amazon sale, this is probably only good for Amazon because it's just a direct link to their store page. There's not many drawbacks to this, assuming that TikTok is not taking a massive cut from Amazon. But it really just depends on the cut they're taking, because if TikTok is taking the winning split here, Amazon is just losing. They're giving TikTok more prominence and more legitimacy in exchange to sell things on TikTok hypothetically at a loss. We don't know if it's at a loss or not. That is a possibility. But yeah, nothing huge, just a little interesting. And next up, we have Twitch starting an experiment to hold potentially harmful messages that are posted in chat before they actually reach public chat. And the objective with this is to decrease harassment in streams. Now, I really don't think it's gonna work on Twitch. I really don't think with the way Twitch culture is, this will work. Because the big problem with these kinds of bots is they have no context for like literally anything. Like, these kind of bots are aware of words that are bad, right? But they have no cultural understanding of what they're judging. So you could say something that looks bad, but it's really not. The bot's just interpreting it as it is because there's a word in there it doesn't like. So I don't think this is gonna work well on Twitch. I really don't. It doesn't work well well on YouTube at all. The amount of comments that I see that get potentially help or review that are just totally normal is insane to me. Like, I don't know how the bot is picking out these messages because they're normal messages a lot of the time. And also, the example they gave is really bad. The example they gave are, "You are a butthead." That is the least insulting comment I think you could ever make, right? So not a good example because these bots are notorious for blocking stuff like this. And Twitch did clarify they didn't want to use actual terrible... And Twitch did clarify they don't want to use actual terrible language in the tweet, but they could have just like censored it or something. The marketing just seems to be tailored towards like investor type people versus the creators, which is what this tool is for. Because I don't think a single Twitch streamer would have cared if they just used a censored curse word or something. This is so baby coded. And next up, we have Apple enforcing their App Store policies on Patreon. So basically for a while, Patreon's been trying to skirt around this 30% rule that Apple has. Whatever is bought on an iPhone, Apple gets a 30% cut of it because they're greedy. That is the only real reason. And Patreon attempted to skirt around this by adding a third-party payment method within the app. And Apple did not like this at all. So they are forcing Patreon to get on board with the App Store or get cut from the App Store. So they really have no choice here. And to put into perspective how high this cut is, Patreon says that they only take 8 to 12% of all the money that comes out of their platform, right? So if you're a creator on Patreon, if someone subscribes to their iPhone, they are paying more to Apple than Patreon, which is obviously absurd. And Patreon is also adding the ability for creators to absorb the cost of Apple's cut. But if you end up doing that, you go from getting about 90% of the money to like 60%. Isn't that ridiculous? Apple doesn't do anything special. They just process the payment. That's it. Apple's cut of in-app purchases is just ridiculous. It needs to be cut down. I really hope the EU can do something about it, and I really hope the US does something about it because it's ridiculous. None of these storefronts should be charging 30%. It is absurd. And that goes for Steam too, okay? Valve, I like ya, but your cuts are stupid. And next up in some good news, Joe Biden's administration is pushing forward a bill that make companies that sell subscription products to make it as easy to cancel as it was to sign up, which is good. If you're against this, what is wrong with you? If you sign up for a gym online in 2 seconds, you should be able to cancel in 2 seconds. This goes for literally anything. If you make it super easy to sign up and really hard to leave, you're running a scam operation. Because if your product was really that good, you wouldn't have to prevent me from leaving. I would just stay. And they'd also be cracking down on doom loops, which they describe as basically forcing people to deal with robots and stuff like that to get to an actual person, which I agree with. If you need to call somewhere to get something done, having to deal with like 5 minutes of talking to a stupid robot is the most infuriating thing on the planet. Like, I get it. I'm sure the dumbest people alive call you all the time, right? But I just need to talk to a person for literally 30 seconds. That is it. And next up, we have Meta killing off their misinformation tracking tool, which is really funny. Also really interesting they did this right before the election. There might be something at play here, like incentives for Zuckerberg, but who knows? Either way, I just thought this was interesting. Like, why would they cancel this? It is obviously a good thing, and it's probably just because it costs them money, right? They don't really make money from this kind of thing, and frankly, misinformation is good for Facebook. The amount of AI Facebook garbage posts I see makes me question if anyone actually uses that site anymore. I really don't think real people are on Facebook anymore. I think it is all bots. And next up, Epic Games has launched on mobile, which means Fortnite is back on iOS. So if you're uninitiated in this whole drama, basically Tim Sweeney got really butthurt at Apple because Apple takes a very large cut of every transaction, 30%. So Tim Sweeney was understandably upset by this, and he sued Apple. And there was a bunch of back and forth, and basically they came to agreement that Epic Games could make their own launcher. It was after a lot of fighting, but they eventually got there. So if you're a Fortnite mobile kid and you have an iPhone, you are so back, okay? Fortnite is back on the iPhone, at least in the EU. I really don't know if this applies to anywhere else. All the material says in the EU. But in my opinion, Apple and Google should have always had third-party app stores. That should have always been an option. It's kind of ridiculous. It's not. They very clearly have an unfair position where they own the marketplace and the phone. That is obvious. So yeah, to me, this is just how it should have been. They should have always had the ability to make their own app store if they wanted to, but at least something finally happened with it. And next up, we have AT&T launching a misleading ad and then them removing it themselves after being called out. So basically what happened was T-Mobile signed a deal with SpaceX to use satellites to make phone calls and get data and all that kind of stuff, right? And T-Mobile signed that deal. So AT&T heard about this and didn't like it very much and made an ad showcasing satellite calling when you can't do that on an AT&T phone. And their excuse as to why it was okay was because they put a disclaimer on screen that says satellite calling is currently not available. But they're running ads that showcase satellite calling. Now, the ads are gone, so I can't just show you the full ad, but here's a screenshot where it says making satellite connection. It's right there. This is obviously advertising a feature that doesn't exist. And generally speaking, advertising things that don't exist is illegal. You can't just lie about a product, get a bunch of investor money, and never release it. Multiple people have gone to prison for that. And with that being said, you're probably wondering, how does Elon Musk get away with it then? And my answer to that is, wait till he goes bankrupt. They're gonna be knocking on his door the instant his companies collapse. I guarantee you. But to make this AT&T ad worse, the second version is the only one with the disclaimer. The second version is the one with this disclaimer. The first version says things like, the future of help is an AT&T satellite call away. Again, this feature doesn't exist, at least not for AT&T. The funny part about this story is that T-Mobile actually has this ability, or at least will very soon, because they have that deal with SpaceX. So the company that reported AT&T was T-Mobile. And I just think that's kind of funny. But yeah, AT&T is scum. We all knew this. And next up, I want to talk about review bombing in two different games. So, Helldivers 2 recently had a patch, and this patch released new content, as well as a bunch of nerfs. And the community of Helldivers 2 is surprisingly kind of split on this. Personally, I have changed my review of the game to negative, because every time for the past couple months, the developers in Helldivers 2 have been making fumbles, and the community has always given them some backlash, right? But when you release like 3 to 4 patches in a row, and every single major patch makes guns worse, like they nerf a bunch of guns, and on top of that, also breaks a bunch of mechanics, it gets really tiring. Most of the Warbond updates for the game have come out broken, okay? If you want me to pay for a premium Warbond, the guns need to not be broken when they launch. And I'm not talking about minor things, okay? Like, I'm talking like they mess up the damage values completely, or it crashes your game or other people's game. Like, one of the very first Warbonds for the game, I forgot what it was called, it was the electricity one. The items in that Warbond would just crash your game or your teammate's game. It was kind of the luck of the draw of who got crashed, and most of the updates haven't been that bad, but a lot of the updates have introduced massive problems to the game that are frankly unacceptable. Like, for another example, one of the more recent patches would destroy your FPS if you open the menu at all, and the only way to revert your FPS back to normal was to restart the game and not open the menu. A very ridiculous bug that should have never gotten pushed to the final release. And the most recent update for Helldivers 2 contained a Warbond that was fire themed. And in response to launching the fire theme Warbond, what do? They nerf all the fire weapons. Why? This is like the biggest thing everyone's been complaining about. Every time anyone likes a gun, it gets nerfed. It is a PvE game, and I am tired of my loadouts constantly feeling useless after I get used to them. And it's been like this for months, and on top of that, the CEO literally stepped down to have this not happen. And to have it happen again after they said it wouldn't is very frustrating. And I will change my review once they do what they said they were gonna do, which is stop making the game worse. And I brought this up because I think Helldivers 2 is a pretty good example of proper review bombing. I think the response is pretty fair, honestly. But you have to keep in mind, it is mixed at 44% right now because for the last couple months, the developers kept saying they're gonna change the game and make it better for players. But they keep doing the opposite. It's been like this for multiple months. And then we have Hunt Showdown 1896. Basically, if you're unaware, Hunt Showdown is an extraction shooter. It's like Tarkov Light, that's how I usually describe it. And if you're unfamiliar with Tarkov, I don't know, just play the game, it's pretty good. But this game recently just got a massive update that's basically a new game, okay? There's a new map, the engine's different, the graphics are massively improved. In my experience, the FPS is also improved, but the game has been review bombed to no end. Currently, the game sits at mostly negative with 33% positive, which is very bad. And you're probably wondering, what is the big problem with this game? Well, the big problem with this game is people don't like the menu. That's it. That is the biggest issue people have with this update. And my take on it is I agree. The menu is not good, okay? But this game does not deserve a mostly negative just for the menu. The update is free and phenomenal, and it really doesn't deserve to be bogged down like this just because of the UI. Like, this is pretty unfair in my opinion. Now, I am less aware of the details of the build-up of this. This could have been a long process I'm unaware of. Like, maybe Crytek made a bunch of promises and didn't meet them. But the two major complaints I see about this update are the UI is bad, and there's performance issues. And I can't speak to the performance issues. I really don't have them. I will say though, update your drivers. It helped me a lot. When I first played without updating, it ran horribly. I updated, it was magically better. So if you haven't updated your drivers, do that. But most of the reviews are just about the UI. And guys, the UI in Hunt Showdown has always been bad. Did you guys just notice that? Actually, in fact, I'll take it a step further. Most modern game UIs are trash. They're just not good. They're all blocky, huge, unintuitive. I don't like most game UIs anymore. Most of them are not great. So I really just don't think this game deserves this low of a rating because of the menu and the menu alone. Now, if a lot of people are having performance issues, that's whatever. Okay, I get that. That's a very valid thing to complain about, honestly. But most of the reviews are just about the UI being bad. And I think this is a bad case of review bombing because I don't think it's proportional to what it should be receiving. Like, yeah, the UI sucks. I agree. But the rest of the update, at least in my experience, has been pretty good. And all of the negative reviews are just complaining about the UI. That's it. And again, The old Hunt UI was also bad. Like, if you think the last one was good, it's because you were used to it. That's it. Because it wasn't good. As someone who played the game, but not super frequently, I would have to relearn the menu almost every time I played the game. It's not an intuitive UI at all. It sucks. And that goes for the new one and the old one. But my question to you is, do you think Helldivers 2 deserved the review bomb? And do you think Hunt Showdown deserved the review bomb? Because I do think Helldivers 2 deserved the review bomb, and I don't think Hunt Showdown deserved one this bad. I think the Hunt Showdown is just too extreme. If people really didn't like it that much, that's fine. But for the UI alone, that is kind of a stupid reason to not recommend the game at all. You barely interact with the UI, and it's not that bad. Like, you can navigate it, okay? It's not incomprehensible. If you can't navigate it, I'm sorry, learn how to read. Like, sure, it might be a bit tricky, okay? It might be annoying, I agree. But I saw some people say they literally can't get into a game, which is ridiculous. Learn how to read. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Like and subscribe for new. Follow me on Twitter @spatnz1. And click the answer reset, check out more of my content, and have a good one.